So we're going to explore one of four. We're going to start with number one, perhaps the most important, or certainly up there, hidden tactics in Pacific Rim Extinction. And I say hidden because certainly it's a core component of the game. It's vital. But it's easy to miss, or it's easy not to rank as high as it should be just based on the dynamic action of the game, right? Rolling dice, blowing stuff up, smashing buildings, picking up objects and throwing them, interacting, not to mention the various mission parameters on there, and customizing your Jaegers or your Kaiju. Movement is so important. Now, the first kind of giveaway, if you've played other wargaming systems, we have a duality of very precise movement. We've got hex bases and a hex ruler with pivots, and depending on when you can pivot depends on the actions and whether it's a Jaeger or a Kaiju on there. On a side note, the models are fantastic. Absolutely fantastic, heroic scale, pre-painted. What made it a little bit easier is the nameplate, the facing nameplate of each Kaiju or Jaeger. I went over and highlighted it with a marker on there and then a little bit of paint just to have it pop a little bit more, because some of the models, it's obvious the direction they're facing. Some, the poses are very dynamic, not so obvious. And the last thing we want to do is think our piece is positioned a certain way, and then we find out it's not, and we selected the wrong action on there. And a move is a move. You know, once it's on the table, that's where it is. I found just bringing that facing out a little bit makes sure that there are no mistakes, because movement is key. So the first giveaway is we have a game mechanic with very, very precise movement. Yet the illusion is it is very free-flowing and free-form in that it's not played on a hex map on there. It's played on an open gaming map, whether that's the supplied map or some sort of urban map or maybe a traditional wargaming table. So it's easy to overlook. Compare that to, say, BattleTech. Yes, you can play BattleTech on a traditional wargaming table, but precision is key in BattleTech for range, for movement, for facing, for terrain. So it's played on a hex map, and the points of action are spent moving your mech and interacting, whether you can shoot or make physical attacks on there. Very, very similar to Pacific Rim. Movement is key because once you've engaged, once you've hit base to base in that forward-facing arc, and of course, I am speaking somewhat in general terms. Kaiju, they have some shooting attacks, but essentially you want to get up there and wreck face. And the Jaegers are a little bit more balanced in that they've got some decent shooting, but they've also got the close combat attacks on there. Certainly not as potentially powerful. Although Saber Athena, Wave 1, if you can pull the combos off. On a side note, Saber Athena, if you can pull off the triggers and the combos and the synergy, in my opinion, as of right now, Wave 1, and we need Wave 2 immediately, ASAP, is potentially the most powerful piece in the game. Compared to Obsidian Fury, has the greatest kind of skill and dexterity, and in my opinion, the duality of being able to be very nimble and also deliver some really, really powerful attacks. I mean, they've caught the kind of narrative, of that, of the movies on there. Movement is important because once you lock base to base, once you're in there essentially delivering physical attacks, it is very hard to disengage without suffering massive penalties. And by massive penalties, I mean you can try to disengage, but the Kaijus are right on top of you at that point on there. And especially if you're outnumbered 2-1, and that doesn't necessarily mean 2 Kaiju are alive versus your 1 Jaeger. It could be just in that little area where you're playing, there's 2 that are in potential range. And I say potential range because the movement is exact. You can be base to base we're just looking at it from the Jaeger perspective, right? I can be base to base fighting a kaiju, and within the movement area, one turn of movement, another kaiju is going to come in there and make contact. I'm not going to be able to survive that. Even with some legendary dice rolling, I'm not. With the impulse dice, if the kaiju can activate first and they get lucky and they pull that puts me in a really bad spot. So it's not only looking in the moment where you are, it's projecting out and realizing, okay, potentially for this turn, who's going first? And potentially for this turn, what if the impulse dice works against me on there? And likewise, you could gamble and say, if the impulse dice passes and you get to go, that is an advantage. But I would not want to plan for the fate of the dice, even though I love the dice and I'm willing to gamble on it on there. But tactically, once you've engaged, all you can really do is begin to back off with your movement. And it's so I say precision movement because impassable objects or objects that need to be smashed through will suddenly speed bump and slow things down. Admittedly, they slow down the kaiju a little bit more than the Jaegers, simply because the Jaegers have some decent shooting options on there. But paying attention to the facing and paying attention to your approach, really picking the moment to run in, really picking the moment to do that is so vital and so important. So I say that because there's a reason why they're hex-based. There's a reason why we're pivoting. We're using a movement ruler on there. It's not just like other war games where I have my unit, okay, it can move 8 inches. Just get your tape measure and move it. Even when you're trying to be precise with that, because there's not a defined base and because it's not a ruler that you lock in, there's a little bit of swing back and forth. With Pacific Rim Extinction, we need to master that movement. We need to also master the pivot on there. I mean, you could just tactically challenge yourself and practice navigating and moving around on the table on there. And no kidding aside, that's a very valuable skill that I'm already looking to develop. I'm already dozens of games in, having a blast, trying to win, but not really caring whether I win or lose because I'm trying to unlock the kaiju. I'm trying to get the tactics. I'm trying to look at the combos. But I'm already really realizing, like, wow, this is a very, very keyed in dynamic movement game. And I need to master that movement to be able to make sure that I can engage when I want and to make sure that I don't get kaiju space bug rushed and locked into combat like that, where without some softening up with some shooting, I don't want to go toe to toe on there.